So we're back again, and a reminder: if you look down below the video on YouTube, you'll find I've indexed the meeting, and it lists the chapters, so the chapters show up on the. You could click those and go to that part of the video, and there's some other links there. There's a link to our Slack channel, and a link to the YouTube videos, and a link to the index for these meetings, and there's also a link to the index for the old ROS agriculture stuff that I started creating. And related to that, if you use the Slack channel, I normally post this to the Slack channel, so the exact description that shows up under the YouTube would show up in Slack. But Slack has decided to bite me and not just display the YouTube icon if I do that anymore. So I'm going to change it back to when I back when I was moving from one place to another. I just uploaded the videos and just posted it to Slack and said, there's no description, I'll come back to it later. And the icon was showing up for it. And then later when I came back and created the description and tried to edit it into that, then Slack refused to display the YouTube icon no matter what I did on that. And finally, I realized if I delete all the description out and just put a link out to our HTML index, the composite index, that would work. So I think starting this week, I'm going to post the new one on Slack this way, and this should not affect what you see on YouTube, but I just wanted to point that out, that it's going to trim down the stuff that gets posted to Slack, but you can still click on it and go out and find, it'll bring up the big index, and it's just a composite every week we've done. But the disadvantage is you can't go to Slack and search for something you expect to be in the description of or the index, because it just won't be there. But if you go out, pull up the big index and search there, you can find everything. So that may or may not make sense if you once you watch the video and the look at the stuff down below it, that might make more sense. And if you're on Slack, you can go out and see what I'm changing there. But so anyway, that's something I did. Now, other than that, somewhere a while back, I tried to get my Raspberry Pi set up on a table. I went out in the garage and got a monitor. It was the wrong one. Grabbed the other one. It needs a DVI cable on the thing, and I couldn't find one, and I had no idea what it was. And just the other day, I was digging through a box, and here's a brand new DVI to HDMI cable. So theoretically, I could set up my Raspberry Pi and just walk up and turn it on now without having to do a lot of screwing around. And I was asking Al early if he knows how these light bulbs work, because they have me baffled. This one flickers, one of the segments drops out, and I just wonder, is there like a resistor in the base? It doesn't look like enough room to put electronics in there. So I don't know how they convert 120 volts AC into something that runs these LED filaments. And Al didn't seem to have the answer, and maybe I did a couple searches, how do they work, and I haven't come up with anything yet. So anyway, that's got me baffled. And if anybody knows, well, I guess if anybody knows, there's nobody on here to answer it. So I played with that and couldn't figure anything out. I was trying to think. The other thing we were talking about was, I several meetings I said, well, you could probably just build a simple oscilloscope out of like a little Arduino or an STM processor board. And I started searching for that, and I found, tons and tons of links, and people have some really simple stuff. You take just Arduino and a couple of resistors on the input, and they seem to hook it up to like an LCD display. And some of them use the little tiny ones, little board that's about this big, and you can see that it's got a waveform on it, but doesn't really do any good. Up to, I found a fairly big one that looks pretty promising. So that seems to be one thing, that they'll take a microcontroller and put an LCD on it and just make a self-contained unit. And then other people will use a cell phone that connects to your microcontroller, and you download a cell phone, or you download an oscilloscope app to put on your phone. So that there's a bunch of them doing that. And then depending what your little microcontroller board is, I've seen Arduino Nano, I've seen the blue pill board, I've seen the black pill board, and some people are using the Raspberry Pi Pico, and all these different ones seem to have different options. And just before we started recording, we were out playing around, and Al found some that's using a cell phone and just uses the audio input. So you just put some circuitry on a board and fire up this app on the cell phone. And by just plugging in, like $2 worth of parts into your cell phone, you can now turn that into an oscilloscope. And they say it runs from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, because that's the audio range. that your phone would be filtering for and displaying. But that seems like a really cheap way to do that, and without paying, paying 300 to $1,000 for a big oscilloscope. In a lot of cases that would work and get you by. So I might play with some of that stuff and see if I can get any of it to work, and then I could report back. Now, I'm not going to commit to any of this, as I keep saying, but if I get it working, I'll present what I found, and just talk through the ideas and say, does this make sense or not make sense? So that's kind of where that's at. And other than that, I don't think I've done anything. I've done a few things, but I don't remember what they were, and I didn't write them down. So I'm going to say that's all for me this week, and I'll turn it over to Al.
Talking about oscilloscopes, Jeff found what I thought was a really cool DIY deal with using was it a blue pill or a black pill? You'll post the link, and it was 500. It was a 500 kilohertz. This is 200, but I think I saw one. Come on back. Yeah, this one says 500 kilohertz. Jeff knows about the sampling rate stuff. I don't. So that build or buy, this is a buy option for $50, but this screen is a little bit smaller than the other screen. I think he used a 3.2, and this one uses a 2.4, looks like. So anyway,
And one more comment on that. Before you go to a lot of trouble to piece together and build something, a random thing off the internet that's not going to work as well as a commercial unit, consider that the other one he was just looking at was $36. This one's $50. You got to decide, should you just shell out the money for one of these off the shelf and have it delivered to your front door, or do you want to waste a lot of time? If you want to figure, play with this stuff and see how it works, then yeah, go ahead and build one from scratch. And if you can get one that's the cell phone and just $5 worth of parts you plug into it, that's certainly probably worth the time and the effort just to have that around. So if you say, gee, I need to have an oscilloscope that shows me low frequency stuff, that's a good way to go. But you could just shell out the money for that other one was $36. This is $50. This is also single channel, but again, you have to compare all that stuff together, and you have to decide, is it worth your time to try to build one from scratch? So that's just one more thing that goes into the whole mix here. So that I just wanted to point that out before anybody wastes all their time trying to do that and finds out, because usually by the time you get them done, they're not going to have all the fancy features that these commercial ones have. So that's just something to keep in mind.
speaking of wasting time, because I can often get on, I can talk for hours about going down deep, dark rabbit holes. One of the deep, dark rabbit holes that I've been going down is this is a sort of a logical layout of my RTK base station, and it's solar powered or intentionally solar powered. And I've got an RPi 3 and the RTK, I'm sorry, the F9P GPS, but this 10 amp solar controller also has this RS-232, and it's not the only solar powered thing that I have. And with my cows, we have a solar powered electric fence to keep our bull on our property versus the backdoor neighbor's bull on their property. And I don't have any monitoring on that. And I thought, okay, so I can use this for my RTK base station, and I could also, if I learned something about how to get into that RS-232 uh, connector, I can apply it to my bull protection electric fence as well. And so I've struggled with this a bit, and but ultimately I've been able to get it to work using this TTL to RS-232 adapter. This is an RJ12 connector. It talks Modbus, so I can get from this to this over to an ESP32. I struggled getting this 38 pin one working, but I used a 30 pin one working, and I hooked up this one wire temperature controller too, because I thought it would be nice to also monitor the temperature of things. And part of the reason I wanted to have this separate in my RTK is I thought, well, if I ever struggled with keeping this thing powered, I could, or didn't want the RPi running 7x24, 365, I could turn this off and have a web interface to the ESP32 and put a relay in here somewhere and just turn this thing on and off when I wanted to. And so I can report that I have that working at least a little way. The code for that shows up if you click that link in Slack. It's a part of my overall repo, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, but at the moment, what I've got connected to it is the temperature sensor and one UART, which is used for the Modbus. And it's polling the temperature, 4 times a minute, and it's polling the Renogy 3 times a minute. It averages that stuff out and posts a record to something else that I was sort of trying to learn about a little bit is I'm going to call it the SPIFs file system on an ESP32. I don't know if that's how they pronounce it, but you can write a CSV to an ESP32 and then pull that periodically from the RPi to get that data. So that's what this is doing for me. And what that ends up looking like, this is FileZilla. On the right-hand side is my RPi, and on the left-hand side is my Windows 10 machine. And the cron job is set up with a small Python script to pull the data off the ESP32 once a day at can see from the file. I did one yesterday manually, and then this morning it kicked off at 6 and took, it appears to be about 10 seconds then to get that data over. And yeah, I haven't opened that up yet to see what that looks like, but this is what that data looks like. So I get a temperature. It's actually sitting on my back porch, and that is pretty hot until it gets down to till nighttime. I'm just scrolling through to see what the lowest temperature was. So it looks like it got down to 71 degrees, and the battery voltage 13.8, the lowest it looks, that's interesting. It dropped a volt down to 12.7 before the sun will be coming up at this time and charging it back up. So anyway, it's interesting. I could plot that, and Jeff will be super smart about how to analyze all that stuff. But I just wanted to, as my daughter says, educate myself on how to get data off of this thing, including the temperature, and then ultimately get it over here to the RPi. Now, part of the reason I went down that deep dark hole is I had to rebuild this RPi for a couple of reasons. One is that I started off with an 8 GB memory card, and then well, that didn't end up very well. So I'll start with whatever the 64 GB disk is. So I had to rebuild that. And so now I think I've got my base station to a point where it's good. And I've got back to Slack. What else was I going to talk about? Oh, the script that just talks to that ESP32 is out here. I need to fix my, I set up some UDEV rules this morning. I haven't gone back to update this code, but it sends a command over to the ESP32, and then it starts based on that command pushing the data over here. And yeah, I'm sure they'll find problems with it, but worked once with the cron job and everything this morning. I also have correction data coming from the base station to, I just picked port 6001 to put correction data out onto my local network via Wi-Fi. And so I've got that data going over there. And this is my first, again, back to my, let's see, pull up my Miro board. My electronics board on my tractor has two F9Ps, and I'm going to get, via Wi-Fi, pull correction data down from this, push that correction data over to these F9Ps, and, all works well. These both achieve RTK fix, and I can then derive heading based on comparing the position of those two. That's the theory. Oh, I still have that old GPS
Uh,
sitting over there. I need to
before you
delete that.
before you go too far down the path of feeding correction to both of those and taking your two fixes and doing the math on that, what I do, I just feed correction data to the first one. So your one there, you call them the one on the left, I assume is
Base
that
link.
that that's one that's going to give you your actual latitude and longitude as an RTK fix. And then what I do, I don't feed correction data to the other board. I just simply run a piece of wire, a jumper from the first board to the second board. And the first board generates new correction data and feeds it to the second board. And it says, oh, I see moving baseline stuff coming in now. And then once you set that up, it says, oh, okay, everybody's happy. And you pull up the nav rel pos ned message, I think is what it's called. Pull the one that's doing the heading. It's got the heading already calculated for you. And just an extra note on that, Walter too, the guy from New Zealand, they bought these boards and they started off doing what you just suggested, where you take the fix from both of them and then do the math to figure out what the heading is. And I said, well, I'm doing this other way. And the next meeting they came back and said, oh, we tried it. I thought they said the way I'm doing it works better. And it's simply because they have access to more information inside of the board that can, like phase shift and all this kind of stuff. And so I think it just simply gives you a better heading if you do it that way. And the other thing is, once you fire it up, you just go, if you're using your utility program, connect it to your heading board and say, show me that message, and it'll pull it up and give you the, it's got like 50 different things that's reporting in that message. But one of them is simply called, it's called heading or angle from something, or it gives you a number in degrees with no decimal points. So you have to chop it off. It's like a 12-digit number it's giving you out of the thing for heading. And so you have to know where to chop it off to get the heading. And what was the other point about that? It's actually reported into degrees. I think it's degrees from north. So it's going to be, well, since the message is called NED, I assume it's in the northeast down format coming out. So anyway, that gives you a number, and you might have to convert it from one format to another or whatever, but it just seems like if you let the thing take care of the data for you, you've probably got a better chance of working. So since you got that pulled up, one thing to mention, if you want to use the hardware UARTs on this board, see in the upper left there, it says TX1, RX1, TX2, and then I guess there's another RX2 down below. Yeah, I was thinking some of them were on the right-hand side, but I guess not. Now, in order to get those to work, you have to set the somewhere there's a voltage reference. Yeah, the reference pin there. So I think I seem to recall you tie that to either 3.3 or to 5 volts, depending what you want the what you want the signals to be coming in and out of the thing. So number one, you have to set up the reference on both boards to match, and then you have to decide which UART you're going to use. Are you using any of the UARTs for anything at this point?
So it was all
So-
USB.
okay, so just we'll say for the sake of argument, just pick TX1, so that your base board of the base heading pair. We're going to use TX1, so um, you just put a wire from there. So just put a stake pin and then you use one of those. Are your boards mounted next to each other?
Physically, yes.
Okay, so I just get one of those little jumpers, the what they call the DuPont jumpers, which I was going to hold it up here, but anyway, just get one of those and plug it onto that pin, and then on your other board, just go to RX. It doesn't really matter, but I'd go to say RX1 just so you can keep the two the same. So on the other board there, that's what the second pin from the top.
Hmm.
So again, put a stake pin on that and plug that in, and your ground should already be connected through your USB or through your power, but you could run a ground wire from one board to the other. Again, just put a stake pin on each one and run a ground wire between them, and that will get that will pass a signal across. So then when you configure the first board, you have to go ahead and say set up the UARTs, and under TX1 somewhere you can say, I'm going to have to go look this up, but I think and the RGU Simple website might tell you how to do this too. But you have to go in and basically say on that UART, I want to publish these RTCM messages. So you got two extra messages you have to publish to get the heading stuff to work. And then back over on the other board, the heading board, I think it's automatically accepting correction data from all three ports. So whether you put it in on the USB or put it in on um, either UART, I think it will automatically just see that and use it. But I guess you would know more when you get in there and try that. So I would not send correction data to your heading board. I just let the wire connection between the two do that. And then once you do, it just comes up. And the other advantage is, I think, whether you have any correction data coming in or not, I think the fact that the first board is generating new correction data and the second board is reading that correction data, it's supposed to generate a heading whether you have correction data coming in or not, I think. And I haven't proven that. I was thinking that should just work. If I just say stop the correction data in the first board, the heading should still be there and should still be accurate. And I don't remember. I was thinking maybe it didn't work as well as I thought it did, but that's something else to consider. That once it's hooked up and both boards are running and seeing satellites, I think it will generate the heading for you all the time, whether you're moving or not. So
And
that's just some things I thought of.
oh, thanks for that, because I mean, if those guys came back from New Zealand and said that's a better approach, that's good enough for me. Um, what's this called? Did you say it's moving base? I mean,
Moving
if I'm
base
look,
moving baseline is what they call this, and they might call it moving baseline heading.
and so there's messages specifically around that.
Yeah, they just simply add two extra uh, RTCM messages on the base. So you just have to say, I want to publish those also. And once you publish those, then the other board I don't think you even have to configure the other board. It just says, oh, I see extra correction messages coming in here. Let me create that heading for you. So I think it just automatically works on that side.
Okay, very well worth going down that path to see. I struggled getting these UARTs. I finally stopped trying to feed the UART data in via these ports because I don't think I had this reference set correctly or something. But yeah, I'll go back and try to figure that out again.
There may be some extra configuration on the UARTs. Maybe it's not quite as simple as I think. But I was thinking you could take like the one for your heading. I think you can just set that back to factory defaults and plug it in, feed the correction data over the UART. I think it'll just automatically work. But
Hmm.
because they say, oh, you go out to RGU Simple, say, oh, here, load this configuration in. way more stuff than you need, and they
Yeah.
use they use it's like a binary format, so you can't even tell what they're doing there. And it turns out there's a text-based format, so you can put in like 5 lines of configuration data and save it, and then you can see it, you can change it, you can move it in and out, and so that's good to figure that stuff out too.
Yeah, I came across their configuration file. I'm like, what in the heck? And so I did like you said, I just went back to factory default and said, okay,
And,
now what works if I just use factory default?
and another tip on that, if you set your board to factory defaults, and then you go out under the configuration program, it'll say something about you can save your configuration, or something about save your configuration that has changed. So you can take your default board and change 2 or 3 things, and then you say you want to save it into the readable format and say save what has changed, and you know the file has just got the 2 or 3 lines that you changed will actually show up, and then later you can load that back in on top of everything. If you set it back to factory default, you can load that back on top and make that work. And once
Hmm.
once you realize that, then that gets around all that cryptic stuff that RG Simple is doing. Which apparently the stuff RG Simple is doing, that's the way the stuff used to work until they realized what a pain that was. And then they came up with this new method where you can do it as an ASCII format, and actually, it actually tells you what you're doing. So that it's good to figure that out, because that'll save you in the long run.
I'm definitely down with that.
And one
Uh,
more thing on that, when you go in to look at that stuff, I said, pull up that one message and look at it. There's something funny about the configuration program. You pull it up and say, I want to go to this block of registers, and I want to go to this message, and it displays it. But it only displays it once. Then down in the lower left-hand corner, the button that says refresh or something. You click that, like it does show you new data, but there's somewhere there's a checkbox you can set that will make it, I was gonna say, make it display, over and over and over automatically. But maybe you have to go back to where it's publishing messages, and you have to tell it there to always output the data. There was something funny about that too. And when you get that far, if it's not obvious, let me know, because I'm sure it won't be obvious. It took a while to figure that stuff out. But there was something funny about it would display once and not again. And I'd have to go back down that path, or maybe the ROS agriculture stuff. I talked about that. I could try to pull it up from there and see what, because I did a lot of research into that board and published a lot of stuff. Now the question is, can we go back and find that? That would be the trick to that. There is an entry on ROS agriculture that says Jeff either demos that moving baseline heading, or Jeff talks about the moving baseline heading, something like that. I might have talked about all those different things I was just mentioning. So
cool.
you either dig through that yourself, or I can go pull it up and try to figure out what they were.
Yeah, I'm to that point, so I will try to dig that up. Um, so I'm not going to talk about this file because that was where I attempted to send correction data to both of them. I think I'm going to bypass that.
That
Uh,
that is still a valid thing you can do, because as I say, the guys in New Zealand's figured out. I think I had figured that out before I realized I can just go read up the number that they're just providing it for me. So, and something you just take your latitude and longitude of both of them, and either convert those to your XY offsets, and then you basically figure out the delta of one or the other, and you do something like an arctangent or something on it to generate your heading. But I was thinking that, if it is giving you if their method is giving you a better heading, it's because they've got more information than we do. They're taking other things into account to make that happen. So
yeah,
I
if there's
just
something they've spent time and it's at the firmware level, I definitely would rather use that than doing my own calculation, I think.
so then the only point is, are you using the uBlocks driver to talk to this, or are you using that the simple driver that you're using on everything else?
The uBlocks driver.
Yeah, there's an
Um,
actual ROS node called something uBlocks, and you can load that up, and it gives you more access to all the messages and everything. And that's what I run.
yeah, I don't have any ROS running at the moment. So it's just, I was just looking at NEMA sentences for output. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean. But if you go in through, if you fire up their configuration program, it's got like the NEMA mode and the binary mode. And if you go in the binary mode, that's how you do the configuration. And then you can also read stuff out using that. So if you pull up, once you get the ROS driver working, I think you can go out and say, I want to publish these what do they call it? ROS NED pause, ROS rail NED pause message, whatever it's called. You can say publish that and it just show up on a ROS topic. You'll see that. And it's got like 50 entries in it or something. So you have to know what you're looking for. But the point is that the message is there, but you have to extract it out of the thing to do anything with it. And I think the ROS driver for uBlocks will pull that up for you and publish that. I'd have to look at my stuff and see how he's doing that because somehow you have to go and you find which entry in that and pull up the heading for it. And as I say, it's like a 12-digit number, and you have to figure out where the decimal point is. And it's like a fixed length, I think. So that's not that hard. And then the other thing was it may not be in the format you want for match your IMU or whatever you're doing. So you might have to do some monkeying around there to either make it turn the other direction or add 90 degrees or subtract 90 degrees or whatever. So but once you can see the number on the screen, then it'll be more obvious what to do with it.
Yeah. So at the moment, I have no ROS installed on this RPi. I'm just getting UBX and NEMA and messages out of this USB port into this USB port for both of these. This moving base link, moving baseline heading. Are you saying that will only go into a ROS node?
No, I'm
Or,
saying you have to extract that information out by whatever means you want to do. And the ROS node should be smart enough to know, say, I want to subscribe to that, and it should actually do that.
got it.
And if you're doing it from the configuration program that runs under Windows, you just go to through and say, show me the registers, and you keep pounding down until you get to that message, and then it'll show you that on the screen.
Yeah, so so physically my workflow is not very complicated. I physically have these sitting on my table connected to a Windows 10 machine and use uSender to configure those, but then I put them into, the tractor scenario, which is they're physically only connected to this RPi and spitting out whatever they're spitting out. So I don't, um, I physically take them off the tractor and put them up against the Windows 10 machine to run uCenter when I need to configure them. That's how I'm doing it at the moment.
And now you're going through all that, probably what you would do is you go into the board that has the heading and you'd say, show me the messages, and you configure it and say, I want to broadcast this, kind of like you do with your ComNav stuff. Say, I want to broadcast this message at this rate or whatever. There's a spot in the this stuff where you say, that's the type of message I want, and I do actually want to publish that. And that probably comes out. Maybe that's what the UBX is you were just talking about. That may be their proprietary binary messages they have.
Yes.
So it simply would put out a message onto probably say I'll put it out the USB because that's how it's going to get back into your RPi. So you're just going to publish one extra message, and then you have to have something at the other end that'll just show up on the cable. And if you got the ROS driver running, it says, "Oh, I can handle that." Or if you're displaying it, I think that might be a binary message, so you might not be able to display that, with a terminal program.
Right.
So you might have to have something to convert that. But the ROS node, I think, will do that.
Okay. Did you happen to remember the name of the ROS node?
I just search up ROS two. You're running ROS two, aren't you?
Yes, I would, but I haven't
So
loaded it yet.
type in ROS two and say uBlocks, and it'll probably take you to the page that has that driver, and just simply run that instead of the one. What's a nav sat NEMA or something. Is that what? But
That was
what
the
what
ROS
are we running
one.
now? Instead of starting that, we just start the U blocks one.
Yeah, that NavSat thing, that was what actually parsed the messages. But anyway,
Do you know, is yours modified? I remember back in the old days, everybody kept saying, "Oh, we're going to modify this stuff," but then people kept modifying it to make it print out other things or look for other things or whatever. I'm just curious.
it
Are you
seemed
running the
like in
stock version?
seemed like in the old days, yeah, under ROS one, there was one tweak or so that we had to make to that, but I'm not remembering what it was. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
if
been
it,
so long ago, I can't remember either. So
the only other thing that I wanted to point out is just like what we just talked about, I forgot what we did to NavSat thing, trying to document stuff in a README file. And I've got one, it keeps getting a little bit longer at the main repo. And then I'd also spent time writing up a little bit of details about the base station. So anyway, just trying to keep my documentation a little bit robust along with my Miro board. So I'm trying to make it easier to, because I forget something and then I go down a rabbit hole and I come back and then I'm like, oh gosh, what did I do? And anyway, that's my
hmm.
approach to trying to remember stuff. That's
And
it for me today.
after going through all that, say, well, you can try this and this and this with the configuration program. It occurs to me, I should get mine fired up again so I can just quickly say connect to my robot and show me what the GPS is doing. And since I now live on the bottom floor of a 3-level apartment building, I doubt if I can get any GPS signal inside the building. Or if I park it next to the window, I might be able to get some GPS through that. Or if I could probably take one of my antennas only has like about a 2-foot cable, and the other one has like a 20-foot cable. So I could just stick them out my window, lay them out in the front yard, and then just park the robot by the window. So if I get to the point where I just at moment's notice fire all this stuff up, and that way I can go through and say, now here, share the screen and say, okay, on my configuration, I'm going to do this and this and this. And it's one of those things on that configuration file. It's got about a million things you can do. So it's a matter of trying to remember, how do I get into the main thing I'm trying to do? And there's like two main sections. There's one that says, show me what the register values are doing. Then another one says configure the register. And it's always a matter you have to figure out which one of those to use and then how to get down to the point you want. And then that's where you get down, you're displaying the values. As I say, sometimes it'll display them continuously and sometimes it won't. And there was some trick to that I don't know if I'd ever be able to pull up, if I documented that, I don't know if I pull it up or just, play with it enough to figure out how to get it to do that. So, and now that you got those boards, keep in mind the blog section on RG Simple, they've just got a wealth of information in there about how to configure things and how to set it up to do different things. So that's worth digging through there occasionally to see what they have in there. And their biggest problem is oh, you can set it up to say do moving baseline. All you got to do is load our configuration files on, and that goes back to the fact they've got binary configuration files that reloads everything in the damn board, which is not really all that helpful. But and then maybe if I had my stuff running, I could go through and figure out again how you change stuff, and then say save out only what is changed to a file and put it in a readable format. I need to go down that path again. I think I might have documented that on ROS Agriculture at one point. So if I look at enough of that stuff, I might be able to figure out, piece that stuff back together. Because you notice I don't write down anything, so that I'm the exact opposite of you.
Well, whatever works is whatever works. Yeah, I just your memory must be better than mine. That's all I can say.
I just have to go back and re-engineer or reverse engineer everything I've done to find out what it was. So I waste more time on that. I wonder how safe my robot would be parked out in the yard because I could just drag it out in the front yard in front of my window and just let it sit there. And but I do have like it was like a dog leash or something that's made out of like steel cable that's covered in plastic, plastic coated cable, and that's got some. They make a loop at the end. They crimp it with some kind of aluminum thing. At one point I used to padlock my robot if I put it in front of my house, so I just clamp it on something in the house and then hook it on the robot. So I had padlocks. So if somebody, yeah, they'll at least realize, oh, I shouldn't be running off with it because it's chained to somebody's house. So that might be a way to get around that.
I love the idea of having it sit outside your window close enough to get your Wi-Fi and you'd be able to remote into it.
And I could even just run an extension cord out, keep it on the charger the whole time too if I did that. So
Oh, I guess that's, yeah.
so anyway, I don't know. I don't know how irate people would get about me doing my experiments like that, but I guess they better get used to it. If I ever start doing experiments again, they better get used to it.
That's it
Well,
for me.
another thing I want to talk about, they were out on the garages. They're going down there like the trim board in between each set of garage doors. It was like a 1 by 12, and it was just plain old pine boards that they put on years and years ago. So they're going down, they're ripping all those off, throwing them away. They're putting up this new stuff. I was just watching them out the window. It looked like they'd bought brand new boards that had been coated with white primer, and they're putting those up. They're just going down nailing those in. So they got down to mine, which is on the end. I thought, well, they're going to have to rip that down because it's going to be too big. And I kept watching, and they kept looking like they were going to just nail it in like that. And then finally, the guy took the thing off, went back down, put it on a table saw, and ripped it down to the width they needed, and came back to put it back on. And I thought, oh, did they put new primer on there? They're just going to leave a bare edge on that. So later, when I was out there looking, I looked at it and I realized, no, there is no primer on it, but it looks like solid. This thing is actually like some kind of solid plastic. It's not really wood, is what they're using. And I'd seen this stuff years ago that, for doing decks or whatever, if you use plastic, it doesn't rot away. And I was looking at the stuff and I thought, well, that might be handy to have. And I noticed that they'd put some out leaned up against the garage to be thrown away. So I grabbed a couple of small pieces. They had one full length piece that they had nailed on for some reason, took it back off. So it's got nail holes in it. But I was looking at it and I thought, well, when it was just on the garage, I was looking at it, well, it looks like it's solid plastic. And then when I picked it up to carry it around, I was like, well, maybe it's like that expanded PVC stuff you can buy.
Hmm.
And I think the brand name on it is Sintra. And I've got some like 1/4 inch thick pieces of that. And I thought, well, maybe that's what it was. So when I picked it up to carry in the house, I thought, this isn't as heavy. That's another reason I thought it might be the expanded stuff, because if that was solid plastic, that would have weighed a ton, but it didn't weigh that much. So I was thinking, well, maybe that would be good to have. So I kept watching to see if I could pull more out of the trash. And when I went out, they had a piece that they'd ripped down like 3 inches wide, and it was in the trash, and it was kind of bent in the middle. And I thought, oh, maybe it's not as strong as I think it is. So I pulled it out and I was playing with it. I thought, well, to put it back in, I might as well just snap it in half. So I went in on the ground and started pushing on the other end, and it started bending and bending. I had to force it really hard. I had to step on it to bend it, and it would not break. I got to like a 90-degree angle, and it was still would not break. And
Wow.
so then I grabbed the other end to push down. I think it pushed down to the two ends were touching, and it still wouldn't break. I thought, oh, I could go get a saw and put a notch in there. I thought, well, it's just trash. I don't need to saw it up and do anything right. So I just throw it back in the trash. But so I started to think the characteristics of it, it might not be as stiff as I thought it was to start with. But something like that, it's just like having it was like probably 3/4 of an inch thick. I got some laying around. I don't have a handy here, but I think it's 3/4 of an inch thick. And it looks like they're buying it as the 12-inch wide, just to replace a 1 by 12 pine board. And I thought, well, you can probably easily cut that with a table saw, or I could use a router on it, or what was the other thing I thought of that? Um, Anyways, it looked like it'd be fairly machinable, and I don't know if you machine into the surface of it. I don't know how smooth it's going to be, because I got to think maybe they'll also put like something in like sawdust or something, to lighten the whole thing up. Basically to foam it up. And I don't know, maybe they could use some kind of powder or something. So maybe it's not as good as I thought, but it just seems like you need big chunks of plastic like that. That might be a reasonable way to go.
Hmm. I just looked up PVC Sintra because I wasn't familiar with it. There's a link to it.
And that stuff's got some really nice qualities to it. It's just like It's stiff and it's hard. It got a nice smooth surface. So I think what they do when they make it, they figured out how to foam their PVC. So I don't know if they put they put a chemical in it, like like baking soda or something, make it foam up, or if they actually put something in. So they probably foam it up so like an inch, or it's like maybe a half an inch thick. And then I think they run it between rollers, which presses it down to the exact thickness that they want, and then it also compresses a little bit. But this stuff is really nice to work with, and it's weighs a lot less than just a big chunk of plastic. And it's something I picked up at I think we had like a plastic store, and they just had the scrap bin. You could go and buy stuff out of that, or I might have picked up a couple pieces at a surplus store. But that stuff's really nice to work with. It cuts really well. It drills really well. And this other stuff, I noticed where it had the nails through it. It looks like it's not really didn't hold up well to those, so it's like kind of bent a little bit where they put the nails in. So I'm not sure it's as strong as I thought it should be, but anyway, that's another option. And it could be that if you go to like Menards, you could buy something else that looks like that. It might actually be more stiff and more rigid, but I don't know. I haven't looked into it anymore. I just grabbed these pieces. I thought, because when I tried looking up the stuff that looks like boards one time, I thought, boy, these are real damn expensive. But here's a case where these people are just going down the line doing this, and all the scraps they have to them are just trash. In fact, that one big long one, um, to them it was trash. I pulled it out and saved it, so I can cut that down later to whatever I want. So I'll experiment with that sometime and see if that is worth reporting back on. That's all I got on that, I guess.
I'm all set.
Okay, I think I'm done too. Let's see. Oh, I was going to bring up the thing about the RTK correction data into both receivers, but we already talked about that, so I guess we're done on that. And I I I, I like to save the chat 4 or 5 times because again, that does not act the way I think it should. And sometimes I get done with a meeting and my chat's gone completely, and depending when people started, when they post it, as suppose, when you start your own chat, it only saves it from that point on. So if somebody posted something early, you don't get it. So anyway, I've got that saved, and I guess I can. Where did my Zoom stuff go? There it is. Okay, so I'm in the meeting.